My name is Hannah, 27, a software developer living in Chicago. 3 years with Sophia felt like a dream come true. We shared a cozy apartment, similar tastes, and what I thought was genuine love. Everything was perfect until that family dinner at her parents' house. I still hear her mother's voice clear as day. "Honey, you're settling. Look at your sister, she married a doctor." But what broke me was Sophia's response. "I know, but hell do for now. Where are you watching from today?" Drop a comment below and subscribe to hear how I smiled, finished my meal, and why I never went back. I first met Sophia at our mutual friend Taylor's birthday party. It was one of those gatherings where I almost didn't go, but something told me to put on a nice outfit and show up anyway. Taylor had rented out a small lounge area at a downtown bar, and the moment I walked in, I noticed Sophia sitting by the window. She had this contagious laugh that made everyone around her smile, and her eyes lit up the entire room. I remember feeling suddenly self-conscious about approaching her, but Taylor introduced us and we instantly clicked. We discovered we shared a passion for hiking true crime podcasts and obscure indie films that none of our other friends appreciated. That night, we talked until the bar closed, exchanging numbers with a promise to meet for coffee soon. Our first date was at a small coffee shop in Wicker Park. Sophia wore a floral dress that made her blue eyes pop, and I remember thinking she was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. We talked for hours about everything from our childhood dreams to our current careers. Sophia was an elementary school teacher who genuinely loved her job despite the modest salary. The way she talked about her students showed how passionate she was about education. I told her about my work as a software developer at a mid-sized tech company. While not exactly Google or Apple, my job paid well and offered good benefits. I loved solving problems and creating useful applications even if my work wasn't changing the world. Sophia seemed genuinely interested, asking thoughtful questions about my projects. Those early months were magical. We went hiking on weekends, discovered new restaurants, and spent countless nights cuddled on the couch watching documentaries. After just 10 months of dating, it felt natural when Sophia suggested we move in together. My lease was ending and her roommate was moving out. It seemed like perfect timing. Our apartment wasn't fancy, but it was in a nice neighborhood with a small balcony where we grew herbs and tomatoes during summer. We established routines that complemented each other perfectly. I made coffee every morning while Sophia prepared breakfast. On weeknights, we'd take turns cooking dinner, sharing details about our day. It felt like building a life together, brick by brick. About 6 months into living together, Sophia suggested it was time to meet her family. She had already met my parents, who were middle-class, hardworking people from Indianapolis. My dad worked as a mechanic, and my mom as a hospital administrator. They immediately adored Sophia and made her feel welcome during our weekend visits. But I soon realized that Sophia's family was different. When she first mentioned her parents, James and Victoria, she casually dropped that they lived in Lake Forest, one of the wealthiest Chicago suburbs. Her father was a successful businessman who owned several commercial properties downtown, and her mother was a former beauty queen who now dedicated her life to charity galas and social events. I still remember our first dinner at their sprawling mansion. The house had columns at the entrance and a circular driveway with a fountain. Inside, everything gleamed with old money elegance. Original artwork hung on walls, and there were rooms we never even entered during that visit. Sophia had warned me to dress nicely, so I wore my best blazer and dress pants. But I still felt underdressed compared to her father in his tailored suit, and her mother in a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. That first dinner also introduced me to Amelia, Sophia's older sister. Amelia was married to Dr. Nathan Williams, a prominent neurosurgeon at Chicago Memorial. They arrived late, making a grand entrance with stories about their recent vacation in the Maldives. Victoria beamed with pride as Amelia showed photos of their beachfront villa on her phone. What struck me most was how Sophia changed around her family. At home, she was laid back and authentic, but here she seemed tense, laughing a bit too loudly at her father's jokes and constantly checking to see if her mother approved of her comments. She mentioned my recent promotion at work, exaggerating my role at the company to sound more impressive. When Victoria asked about my family background, her tight smile barely concealed her disappointment upon hearing about my father's auto shop. "Did you go to school on scholarship then?" she asked, as if it was impossible for a mechanic's daughter to afford college otherwise. "Yes, partial scholarship and student loans that'll be paying off for another decade," I answered honestly, noticing Sophia's slight cringe. Throughout that dinner, I picked up on subtle clues about what this family valued. Victoria repeatedly mentioned their country club memberships, their connections to Chicago's elite families, and Amelia's charity board positions. Success to them clearly meant wealth status and social connections. My career in software development, while respectable, didn't carry the prestige of a medical degree or family wealth. Driving home that night, Sophia seemed relieved. "That wasn't so bad, was it?" she asked. I nodded, not wanting to voice my discomfort. "Your family is very accomplished," I said carefully. She squeezed my hand. "Don't worry about Mom. She's just protective. She'll warm up to you." I wanted to believe her. After all, meeting the in-laws was often awkward at first. My parents weren't perfect either, but deep down, I sensed something concerning about the way Victoria looked at me, like I was a temporary phase her daughter was going through. I ignored that feeling, telling myself that with time, they'd see how much I loved Sophia, and that would be enough. Looking back, those early warning signs were flashing brighter than I allowed myself to recognize. The class differences Victoria's barely disguised disapproval, and most worryingly, the way Sophia seemed to transform around her family. But I was too much in love, too optimistic, too willing to believe that our relationship existed in its own bubble, protected from external judgments and expectations. I didn't realize then that the seeds of our eventual downfall were planted during that very first family dinner, waiting for the right moment to grow into something that would eventually tear us apart. Over the next several months, I made countless efforts to win over Sophia's family. I read up on wine so I could participate in their dinner conversations. I bought new clothes that matched their refined aesthetic, stretching my budget to look the part. I even took golf lessons, hoping to join the men during their Sunday games at the country club. Each family gathering became a performance where I tried to prove I was good enough. Victoria had a special talent for making me feel inadequate without saying anything directly offensive. After one dinner, she mentioned how impressed she was that I'd done so well for myself, given my background. When I showed up with an expensive bottle of wine as a gift, she examined the label and remarked, "How thoughtful. We usually drink the reserve version, but this one is nice too." Every compliment came with a subtle reminder that I wasn't quite at their level. What hurt more than Victoria's passive aggression was Sophia's response to it. She would offer mild defenses. "Mom Hannah works for a great company," or "Hannah actually knows a lot about architecture," but these lukewarm protections always felt like afterthoughts. She never confronted her mother directly or shut down the subtle digs. Instead, she'd quickly change the subject or laugh nervously as if it were all in good fun. Meanwhile, Amelia and Nathan's life was constantly held up as the gold standard. "Did you see Amelia and Nathan's new summer home in Lake Geneva, Victoria?" would ask during brunch. Or Nathan just joined the board of the hospital. He's the youngest member they've ever invited. Even James, Sophia's father, who was generally kinder to me, would chime in with stories about Nathan's accomplishments or Amelia's social connections. Their homes, vacations, charity involvements, and social status were perpetual topics of conversation. Whenever Sophia and I shared news about our lives, it was met with polite interest that quickly shifted back to the real achievements in the family. After dinner at their house, I often left feeling like everything about my life was somehow less than. A particularly painful incident occurred during a family photo shoot for James and Victoria's 30th wedding anniversary. The photographer arranged everyone on the grand staircase of their home. "Just family for this one," Victoria said, with a smile, guiding me away from the group. I stood awkwardly to the side as multiple photos were taken. Later, when Sophia and I were included in a few shots, Victoria reviewed them on the photographer's camera and frowned. Let's retake that one. The lighting is odd where Hannah is standing. After several retakes with the same result, she sighed. I suppose we'll just have to work with what we have. That night, I finally expressed my frustrations to Sophia. Do your parents, especially your mom, not like me? Do they think I'm not good enough for you? I asked as we got ready for bed in our apartment. Sophia looked genuinely surprised. That's ridiculous. They think you're great. Then why does your mother constantly make me feel like an outsider? The way she excluded me from the family photos today? You're being too sensitive. Mom is just particular about everything. It's not personal. Sophia dismissed my concerns, applying her night cream in the bathroom mirror. That's just how she is with everyone. Not with Nathan, I pointed out. He gets nothing but praise. Well, he's a doctor, Sophia said, as if that explained everything. Just give it time. Mom will warm up to you eventually. That conversation left me feeling even more isolated. Sophia couldn't or wouldn't see what was happening, and that made me question whether I was indeed being hypersensitive. Maybe this was normal in wealthy families. Maybe I needed to develop thicker skin. Around our second anniversary, I noticed Sophia herself starting to change. She began making comments about our apartment being too small. She lingered over social media posts showing Amelia's luxurious lifestyle. After visiting her sister's new house, Sophia came home quiet and withdrawn. When I asked what was wrong, she sighed. I just wonder if we'll ever have a master bathroom with heated floors and a soaking tub. I was working overtime that month to save for a special anniversary gift, a pair of sapphire earrings that matched Sophia's eyes. I had researched jewelers comparing prices and quality for weeks to find something beautiful that I could actually afford. Meanwhile, Sophia casually mentioned that Amelia had received a diamond tennis bracelet from Nathan just because it was Tuesday. The comparisons became more frequent. Nathan surprised Amelia with a weekend trip to New York. Amelia never has to worry about saving for retirement. Amelia's house has a dedicated home theater room. Each comment felt like a paper cut, small but painful, especially when added to the collection of wounds already inflicted by her family. Our relationship began showing cracks in other ways too. Sophia became more critical of my clothing choices, suggesting brands I couldn't afford. She commented on my meal preparation, comparing it unfavorably to the personal chef who cooked for Amelia and Nathan once a week. When I received a performance bonus and suggested we take a vacation, she seemed underwhelmed by the destinations within our budget. I found myself walking on eggshells, trying to anticipate her disappointments before they materialized. When did I start feeling like I was auditioning for the role of Sophia's partner, rather than actually being it? When did her smile of appreciation become a smile of tolerance? Despite these growing tensions, I remained committed to making our relationship work. I believed that what we'd built together was real and worth fighting for. I told myself that every couple goes through rough patches, especially when navigating different family backgrounds and expectations. I convinced myself that once Sophia and I became more established in our careers, once we had more financial security, these external pressures would fade. So I kept trying. I joined her at more family events. I listened to her increasingly frequent comparisons without becoming defensive. I worked harder at my job, hoping for advancements that might finally earn Victoria's approval. I was so focused on proving myself worthy that I didn't notice how one-sided our relationship had become. I was giving everything while Sophia was gradually revealing that she expected more than I could provide. Looking back, I can see how these months of subtle undermining prepared the ground for what happened at that fateful dinner. The seeds of doubt had been carefully planted by Victoria and unknowingly watered by Sophia herself. What I thought was a temporary rough patch was actually the new normal of our relationship. I was being evaluated against a standard I could never meet by a family that had already decided I wasn't enough. And worst of all, Sophia had begun to see me through their eyes instead of her own. The invitation to the special family dinner came directly from Victoria. She called Sophia one evening in early June, insisting that we attend a formal family gathering to celebrate James' recent business acquisition. Sophia's father had purchased a historic building downtown and planned to convert it into luxury condominiums. It was apparently a deal worth celebrating with the finest champagne and a multi-course meal prepared by their personal chef. The evening of the dinner, Sophia spent hours getting ready. She wore a designer dress I'd never seen before and jewelry that had been a recent gift from her parents. I put on my best suit, the one I reserved for important work presentations and weddings. Looking in the mirror, I thought we looked good together, a matched pair, despite the price disparity in our outfits. The drive to Lake Forest was tense. Sophia kept checking her makeup in the visor mirror and reminding me of conversation topics to avoid. No political discussions, don't mention that development project near the lakefront that Dad's competitor is working on, and please don't bring up your cousin's wedding in Vegas. It sounded too casual. I nodded along, already feeling exhausted before the evening had even begun. By now, these performances had become routine, but they never got easier. Each visit to Sophia's family home required a specific version of myself, one that was more polished, less opinionated, and perpetually grateful for their inclusion. When we arrived, the house was lit up beautifully with valet service provided by young men in crisp uniforms. Inside, fresh flower arrangements adorned every surface, and the dining table had been set with the family's finest china and crystal. Amelia and Nathan were already there, champagne flutes in hand, looking like they belonged in a luxury lifestyle magazine. Victoria air-kissed my cheek, her perfume expensively subtle. "Hannah, so glad you could make it. That suit looks nice on you." "Is it new?" she asked, though something in her tone suggested she knew it wasn't. "No, just saving it for special occasions," I replied honestly. "How practical," she said, with a tight smile, before turning to greet her daughter with much more enthusiasm. The first hour wasn't terrible. We had drinks in the formal living room, where James proudly showed renderings of his new property development. I made appropriate comments about the architectural details, drawing on knowledge from a project I'd worked on that involved real estate software. For once, James seemed genuinely impressed. Hannah actually made some good points about the user interface for the building's smart home features, Sophia mentioned, squeezing my hand. "Is that something you're involved with at your job?" Nathan asked, seeming sincerely interested. "I've been working on a similar system for a smaller development," I explained. "Not as luxurious as your project, James, but the basic technology is comparable." For a brief moment, I felt included in the conversation as an equal contributor. Victoria even nodded along, though her smile didn't reach her eyes. This momentary acceptance made what happened next even more painful. When we moved to the dining room, I was seated between Sophia and James, with Victoria, Amelia, and Nathan across from us. The first two courses passed pleasantly enough, with conversation flowing around business local events and an upcoming charity gala. I was beginning to think this might be the first family dinner where I felt somewhat comfortable. Then, as the main course was served, a perfectly prepared beef tenderloin with truffle butter, Victoria shifted the conversation toward Amelia and Nathan's recent purchase of a vacation property in Napa Valley. "The vineyard views are absolutely stunning," Amelia gushed, showing photos on her phone. "We're thinking of hosting a small wedding vow renewal ceremony there next summer for our 5th anniversary." "How wonderful," Victoria beamed. "You've done so well for yourselves. A second home before 35. That's the kind of stability I always wanted for my girls." I took a sip of wine, preparing for the inevitable comparison that would follow. It came more directly than I expected. Victoria turned to Sophia, her voice dripping with concern that I now recognized as entirely performative. "Darling, have you two given any thought to buying property? The market in Chicago is quite favorable for young professionals right now." Nathan could recommend his investment advisor. Sophia shifted uncomfortably beside me. "We're not quite there yet financially, Mom. Hannah just got a promotion, but we're still paying off student loans." I felt a flush of embarrassment, though there was nothing shameful about our financial situation. We were both doing well for our age, saving responsibly while enjoying our lives. But in this room, not having a vacation home before 30 was somehow a failure. What followed still echoes in my mind, a perfect moment of clarity that shattered all my illusions. Victoria placed her fork down deliberately, looking directly at her daughter. "Honey, you're settling. Look at your sister. She married a doctor. Someone with prospect security status." She took a delicate bite of her food before continuing. "You could have had that too if you'd stayed with Michael. He was from a good family, and he's a partner at his law firm now." The table fell silent. I froze my fork halfway to my mouth. Michael, the ex-boyfriend Sophia had told me was just a college relationship that had run its course. She'd never mentioned he was a lawyer from an approved family. I waited for Sophia to defend our relationship, to say something that would ease the knot forming in my stomach. The seconds stretched painfully. Then Sophia nodded and said quietly, "I know, but hell do for now." Hell do for now. 5 words that revealed everything. I was a placeholder, a temporary compromise, someone to pass the time with until a better option, a doctor, a lawyer, someone worthy of the family name came along. In that moment, I felt completely transparent, as if I could see through the charade of our relationship. 3 years together, countless "I love yous" talks of a future, all built on a foundation of "until something better comes along." The strangest part was my physical reaction. Instead of standing up and making a scene, instead of letting the hurt show on my face, I simply smiled. A calm settled over me, a clarity I've never experienced before or since. I cut another piece of perfectly cooked beef, took a bite, and continued eating as if my world hadn't just imploded. No one seemed to notice anything was wrong. The conversation shifted to some gossip about country club members, then to Amelia's charity work. I participated minimally but politely, passing dishes when asked, nodding at appropriate moments. Inside, I was already gone. I remember studying Sophia's profile as she laughed at something Nathan said. She was beautiful, yes, but suddenly I could see the calculation behind her eyes, the constant measurement of status and worth. Had it always been there, or had her family gradually trained her to see the world through this lens? Did it matter? The dinner concluded with dessert and coffee. I declined the brandy James offered, citing the drive back to the city. I thanked Victoria for the lovely meal, complimented the chef, and helped Sophia with her coat. Every motion felt mechanical, performed by someone else, while the real me watched from a distance. On the drive home, Sophia chatted about the evening, completely oblivious to what had transpired. "Wasn't Dad's news exciting? And Amelia's vineyard looks beautiful, though." "I think it's a bit excessive for a vow renewal, don't you?" I made non-committal sounds, focusing on the road ahead. My mind was already sorting through logistics. What would I take from the apartment? Where would I go tonight? How quickly could I disentangle our lives? "I know, Mom can be a bit much." Sophia continued, misinterpreting my silence. "But the dinner went well overall. Don't you think?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "I just need to get through this drive," I thought. "Just make it back to the city, and then I can start the process of removing myself from this life that was never meant to be permanent anyway." "It'll do for now." The words replayed in my mind with each mile marker we passed. 3 years of my life reduced to a temporary arrangement, a holding pattern until the right candidate came along. The realization was devastating, but also strangely freeing. At least now I knew the truth. At least now I could stop trying to win approval that was never going to be granted. As I pulled up to our apartment building, I made my decision. I wouldn't be anyone's for now option. I deserved better than that. Everyone deserves better than that. The moment we stepped into our apartment, I felt like I was seeing it through new eyes. The photos of us on the walls, the furniture we'd chosen together, the plants we'd nurtured, all of it suddenly looked like props in a play that had just ended. Sophia kicked off her heels, and headed straight for the bathroom to remove her makeup, completely unaware that everything had changed. While she was occupied, I quietly retrieved my emergency travel bag from the back of the closet. I'd always kept it packed with essentials for unexpected work trips, a few changes of clothes, toiletries, my laptop charger, and important documents. Tonight, it would serve a different purpose. I added a few more items: the photo of my parents, my favorite coffee mug, the external hard drive with all my personal files. I wasn't taking anything that we had purchased together or anything of significant value. Those things could be sorted later. Right now, I just needed to leave with my dignity intact. I scribbled a note on the back of an envelope. I heard everything. I won't be anyone's for now option. I'll contact you later about the rest of my things. I left it on the kitchen counter where she'd see it in the morning. Sophia emerged from the bathroom in her pajamas, still talking about her mother's latest charity project. I need to get some fresh air, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I think I ate too much at dinner. Want me to come with you? She asked, though her tone suggested she was hoping I'd decline. No, you get some rest. I'll just take a short walk. Okay, she replied, already scrolling through her phone. Don't forget, we have brunch with Taylor and Ben tomorrow. I lied, knowing I'd be miles away by then. I picked up my bag, gave one last look at the apartment that had been my home, and walked out the door. The moment it closed behind me, tears began streaming down my face. I waited for the elevator with my head down, not wanting the neighbors to see me crying if they happened to pass by. Once in my car, I allowed myself 5 minutes of complete breakdown. I sobbed against the steering wheel, releasing the shock and betrayal that had been building since that moment at dinner. Then I wiped my eyes, started the engine, and called the one person I knew would understand. Jessica. I need a place to stay tonight, I said when she answered, my voice still thick with tears. I'll put fresh sheets on the guest bed, she replied without hesitation. My best friend didn't even need to ask what had happened. We'd known each other since college, and she had expressed concerns about Sophia's family dynamics from the first time she'd met them. I spent that first night staring at the ceiling in Jessica's guest room, replaying the dinner conversation and wondering how I'd missed the signs. By morning, my phone was flooded with messages and missed calls from Sophia. I read them but didn't respond. They ranged from confused, "Where are you? Why did you leave?" to angry, "You can't just walk out without talking to me," to manipulative, "If you loved me, you'd come home so we can discuss this." I finally texted back a single message: "I need space. I'll be in touch about practical matters soon." The barrage continued throughout the day. By afternoon, Sophia showed up at my workplace, causing a scene in the lobby that required security to intervene. My boss, understanding the situation was personal, allowed me to work remotely for the rest of the week. Separating our lives proved complicated. We had a joint checking account for household expenses, shared streaming subscriptions, and 6 months remaining on our lease. I methodically worked through each entanglement, closing accounts, redirecting my portion of the rent to the landlord, and arranging for a moving company to collect the rest of my belongings when I knew Sophia would be at work. Through it all, I maintained my boundary of no direct contact. Everything was handled through email or through Jessica, who graciously served as an intermediary. Sophia vacillated between pleading for another chance and accusing me of overreacting to a careless comment. What hurts most when you're betrayed isn't just the betrayal itself, but the realization that the person you thought you knew is capable of such betrayal. The Sophia I believed I loved would never have seen me as temporary, would never have nodded along to her mother's demeaning assessment, which meant either I'd never really known her, or she'd changed so gradually under her family's influence that the woman I fell for no longer existed. When I was alone in Jessica's apartment, the grief would sometimes overwhelm me. I'd find myself crying while folding laundry, or wake up at 3 a.m. with a physical ache in my chest. I mourned not just the relationship, but the future I'd imagined for us, the house we might have bought, the dog we'd talked about adopting, the lifetime of memories we'd never create. My parents drove up from Indianapolis to help me move into my new apartment, a small but sunny one-bedroom in a different neighborhood. My mother held me while I cried, and my father assembled furniture without asking questions I wasn't ready to answer. Their unconditional support reminded me of what real love looked like, the kind that didn't come with prerequisites of status or wealth. Friends divided along predictable lines. Our mutual acquaintances tried to stay neutral while closer friends took sides. I didn't ask anyone to choose, but it was revealing to see who reached out and who disappeared. A few people suggested I was being too harsh, that everyone says things they don't mean around family. But those people hadn't seen Sophia's eyes when she agreed with her mother. They hadn't felt the casual brutality of being reduced to a temporary placeholder. The worst moments came unexpectedly. Driving past our favorite Thai restaurant, hearing a song that had been playing during our first kiss, finding one of her hair ties in a coat pocket. Each small reminder would knock the wind out of me, leaving me gasping for breath in public places. But even in those dark moments, I never once regretted my decision to leave. Some lines once crossed change everything. I knew with absolute certainty that I could never unhear those words, never unsee that side of Sophia, never trust that any future with her would be built on genuine love rather than convenience. So I held firm when mutual friends suggested reconciliation. I deleted the paragraph-long emails without reading them. I returned the handwritten letters unopened. I was rebuilding my life brick by brick, and I couldn't afford to let nostalgic memories undermine the foundation of self-respect I was trying to establish. 3 months after that dinner, I received a text from Sophia on what would have been our anniversary. Just one line, "I miss you." For a brief moment, my resolve wavered. My thumb hovered over the keyboard as I considered responding. But then I remembered her words, "Hell do for now," and I put the phone away. Some chapters are meant to end, even if the story feels unfinished. After the initial shock of the breakup subsided, I found myself with something I hadn't had in years' space to rediscover who I was outside of a relationship. The apartment I found was in Andersonville, a neighborhood I'd always loved, but Sophia had considered too far from downtown. I painted the walls deep blue in the bedroom and hung art that I'd kept in storage because it didn't match our old decor. At work, I channeled my emotional energy into professional growth. I volunteered for a challenging project developing software for a healthcare startup, working late hours that would have caused tension in my relationship, but now served as a welcome distraction. My focus and dedication caught the attention of senior management. 4 months after the breakup, I was offered a significant promotion to lead developer with a substantial salary increase and equity options. The financial security gave me confidence, but more importantly, the recognition validated my professional worth in a way that Sophia's family had never acknowledged. I was good at what I did. I was valuable. My career path might not have the prestige of medicine or law, but it was respectable and fulfilling on its own terms. With my new schedule and living situation, I found myself with different routines and the opportunity to explore interests I'd set aside. I joined a rock climbing gym, something I'd always wanted to try, but Sophia had dismissed as too risky. The physical challenge of scaling walls became a powerful metaphor for my emotional climb out of heartbreak, each new height reached representing progress in my recovery. I also enrolled in a creative writing workshop at a local community center. I'd loved writing in college, but had gradually stopped as Sophia subtly indicated it was a hobby without practical value. In the workshop, I found my voice again, writing raw, honest pieces about betrayal and rebirth that earned supportive feedback from the group. One instructor suggested I had real talent that could be developed further. My social circle expanded in unexpected ways, too. Jessica introduced me to her cousin's friend Grace, who had recently moved to Chicago. Grace invited me to a cooking class where I met a diverse group of people with no connection to my old life with Sophia. These new friends knew me only as Hannah, not as one half of Hannah and Sophia. Their perspective wasn't colored by the dynamics of my previous relationship. Of course, not every moment was filled with growth and positive change. There were still difficult days. Driving by our old apartment building by mistake. Seeing a woman with similar blonde hair from behind, and feeling my heart race before realizing it wasn't her. Finding a birthday card she had given me while sorting through old papers. Each time, the pain hit fresh, but its intensity diminished gradually with time. The most challenging moments came when I had to interact with mutual friends. Taylor invited me to her holiday party with a careful note that Sophia would not be attending. Even so, I spent the evening fielding gentle inquiries about how I was doing and deflecting attempts to discuss the breakup. I left early exhausted by the emotional labor of appearing healed when the wound was still tender. 6 months after that fateful dinner, I received a text message from an unfamiliar number. "I think you should know. Sophia has been telling people you cheated on her. It's Laura from the writing group. She worked with my sister and told her this version of events." The accusation hit me like a physical blow. Not only had Sophia reduced me to a temporary placeholder, but now she was damaging my reputation to garner sympathy. I drafted several angry responses before deleting them all. Engaging would only prolong the drama and keep me tethered to a relationship I was working to put behind me. Instead, I simply thanked Laura for letting me know and assured her the claim was untrue. Those who knew me well would see through the lie, and those who didn't well, their opinions weren't my concern anymore. This was a liberating realization after years of caring too much about how I was perceived by Sophia's social circle. Then, 7 months after the breakup, while grocery shopping on a Sunday afternoon, I quite literally ran carts with Mark, a former colleague who had moved to a different company. After catching up briefly in the produce section, he mentioned something that made my heart skip. "Did you hear about Sophia's brother-in-law? The doctor? Apparently, he's left his wife for some nurse he works with. It's been all over my wife's social media since they share mutual friends." I stood frozen between the avocados and tomatoes. No, I hadn't heard. Yeah, pretty scandalous from what my wife says. Apparently, he's been having an affair for months, and they just ran off together last weekend. His wife, the one who always posted those perfect family photos, is apparently devastated. I thanked Mark for the update, finished my shopping on autopilot, and sat in my car for a long time afterward. I wasn't happy about Amelia's pain. I knew firsthand how devastating betrayal could be. But there was a certain cosmic irony in the situation. The golden couple the relationship held up as the ideal that Sophia should aspire to had imploded spectacularly. Later that evening, curiosity got the better of me, and I looked at Amelia's Instagram for the first time since the breakup. Her perfect feed of vacation photos and charity galas had been replaced by cryptic quotes about betrayal and new beginnings. Victoria had commented supportive messages on every post assuring her eldest daughter that she deserved better, that real men don't cheat, that the other woman would get what's coming to her. I couldn't help wondering how Victoria was processing this development. Had she realized that marrying a doctor didn't guarantee happiness or stability? Had this shaken her belief in the metrics by which she measured a suitable partner? Most surprisingly, I felt no satisfaction or vindication at their family's troubles, only a profound sense that I'd dodged a bullet. If I'd stayed with Sophia trying to measure up to an impossible standard, I would have continued chasing approval from people whose own value system was fundamentally flawed. 2 weeks later, while getting coffee at my favorite local cafe, I glanced up from my laptop to see Amelia standing in line. My first instinct was to hide, but something made me stay put. When she turned and saw me, her eyes widened in recognition. After getting her drink, she hesitated, then approached my table. "Hannah," she said, her voice softer than I remembered. "Mind if I sit for a minute?" I gestured to the empty chair across from me, curious about what Sophia's sister could possibly want to say after all this time. "I think I owe you an apology. Amelia began wrapping her manicured hands around her coffee cup. I've had a lot of time to think lately, and I've realized I wasn't very kind to you when you were with my sister. The admission caught me off guard. Of all the scenarios I had imagined for a potential run-in with Sophia's family, this wasn't one of them. I wasn't quite sure how to respond. You don't owe me anything, I finally said. I'm sorry about what's happening in your life right now. That can't be easy. Amelia gave a bitter laugh. My perfect marriage was a facade. She said, her voice tight. Nathan had been sleeping with his colleague for over a year. Everyone at the hospital knew. Everyone except me. She twisted her wedding ring, which she still wore despite everything. You know what the worst part is? I think I always sensed something was wrong, but I ignored it because we looked so good on paper. Harvard-educated neurosurgeon marries into prominent Chicago family. It made for great Instagram posts. I nodded, understanding better than she knew. Sometimes we see what we want to see. My mother Amelia continued sighing deeply. She raised us to believe that success meant marrying the right kind of man. Doctor, lawyer, someone with social status. She never emphasized our own accomplishments or happiness, just the marriage market value. She took a sip of her coffee, then looked directly at me. I was the good daughter. I followed the plan perfectly. And look where it got me. I didn't know what to say, so I just listened. It was strange seeing Amelia this way, vulnerable, reflective, lacking the polished perfection she had always projected at family gatherings. When Sophia told us you left, my mother was almost pleased, Amelia admitted. She thought Sophia would finally reconnect with Michael, or find someone more suitable. She paused, choosing her words carefully. But I've never seen my sister so devastated. She really loves you, Hannah. I felt a twinge of something old and familiar, but I pushed it away. If she loved me, she wouldn't have seen me as temporary. I know about what was said at that dinner, Amelia continued. Sophia told me everything. She regrets it more than you'll ever know. It wasn't just what was said, I explained quietly. It was the realization that after 3 years together, she still saw me as someone who would do for now. Not someone she was building a future with. Amelia nodded slowly. Our mother has a way of getting into our heads, making us question our own judgment. I've spent years trying to earn her approval, and even now with my marriage falling apart, I'm still worried about disappointing her. For the first time, I felt a genuine connection with Amelia, shared understanding of the toxic expectations that had shaped both our lives, albeit in different ways. What's next for you? I asked, genuinely curious about how she was rebuilding. Therapy for one thing, she said with a small smile. I've started seeing someone to work through all this family baggage, and I've gone back to school. I'm finishing my master's in art history, which I abandoned when Nathan and I got engaged. Mother thinks it's a waste of time, but for once, I'm not letting that stop me. I admired her resilience, her ability to find new direction amid the ruins of her carefully planned life. Good for you, I said sincerely. We talked for nearly an hour, the conversation flowing more naturally than I would have thought possible. As we prepared to leave, she hesitated again. Hannah, I know it's not my place, but Sophia really is sorry. She's changed a lot since you left. Started standing up to our mother, questioning the values she was raised with. She paused. I'm not saying you should take her back. Just maybe consider talking to her someday when you're ready. I appreciated that she didn't push harder than that. I'll think about it, I said, not committing to anything, but acknowledging her words. As we parted ways outside the cafe, Amelia surprised me with a quick hug. Thank you for listening. I think I needed this conversation more than you did. Watching her walk away, I reflected on how unexpected life could be. I'd spent months avoiding any connection to Sophia's family, and yet this chance meeting with Amelia had given me a new perspective. Not just on Sophia, but on the complex dynamics that had shaped both sisters into who they were. I didn't know if I'd ever speak to Sophia again. That wasn't a decision I needed to make today. But the conversation with Amelia had loosened something inside me, a knot of resentment I hadn't realized I was still carrying. Whatever happened next, I felt more at peace than I had in months. Walking home through the crisp autumn air, I found myself thinking about the strange paths that trauma can lead us down. Amelia's perfect marriage had crumbled, forcing her to reevaluate everything. My relationship had ended painfully, but had freed me to discover my own worth outside of someone else's approval. Sometimes, the worst moments in our lives become unexpected doorways to growth. For the first time since that dinner, I allowed myself to wonder what Sophia was doing, how she was processing everything. Not because I wanted to reconnect, but because I was finally in a place where I could think of her without that sharp pain of betrayal overshadowing everything else. That evening, as I worked on a short story for my writing class, I realized I was writing about forgiveness, not the kind that leads to reconciliation, but the kind that allows you to set down the weight of anger and move forward unburdened. I wasn't quite there yet, but I could see the path ahead more clearly than before. A full year passed since that devastating dinner at Sophia's parents' house. The seasons changed, my career advanced, and gradually the sharp pain of betrayal dulled into a valuable life lesson. I had moved to a larger apartment in the same neighborhood, adopted a rescue cat named Milo, and developed a comfortable routine that felt genuinely mine. My promotion had led to further opportunities at work. I was now managing a team of developers and had been sent to represent the company at a tech conference in San Francisco. My professional confidence had grown along with my responsibilities. I'd even started mentoring junior developers, finding unexpected fulfillment in helping others navigate their career paths. The writing workshop had evolved into a tight-knit group that met monthly at each other's homes. I'd completed a collection of short stories that my instructor encouraged me to submit to literary journals. 2 had been accepted for publication, a small achievement that nonetheless felt significant. I'd found my voice again, both on the page and in my life. My friendship circle had expanded and deepened. Jessica remained my closest confidant, but I'd also formed meaningful connections with people from my climbing gym writing group and a volunteer program where I taught coding basics to high school girls. These relationships were built on mutual respect and genuine interest, without the undercurrent of evaluation I'd always felt with Sophia's family. It was on an ordinary Tuesday that I ran into Sophia. I'd stopped at a bookstore cafe near my office during lunch, and there she was sitting alone at a corner table. She looked different somehow. Her hair was shorter, her clothing style more casual than I remembered. She didn't see me at first, absorbed in the book she was reading. I considered leaving before she noticed me, but something held me in place. Perhaps it was curiosity, or maybe the confidence that comes from knowing you've truly moved on. When she finally looked up and our eyes met, I saw a flash of surprise, then uncertainty. I nodded politely, intending to take my coffee and go, but she stood up. "Hannah," she said, her voice catching slightly. "Do you have a minute?" Against my better judgment, or perhaps because of how far I'd come, I approached her table. She gestured to the empty chair across from her. I set down my coffee and sat. "You look good," she said, after an awkward silence. "Really good." "Thanks," I replied, noticing she seemed nervous, a stark contrast to the self-assured Sophia I'd known. "You too." She fidgeted with her coffee cup. "I've wanted to reach out so many times, but I respected that you didn't want contact. I owe you an apology. A real one, not the excuses I made after you left." I nodded, neither encouraging nor discouraging her to continue. "What I said that night at dinner," she began, her voice low and serious. "It was inexcusable. But more than that, it wasn't even true. The words came out of my mouth, but they were my mother's thoughts, not mine. I'd spent so long trying to please her that I started parroting her values without questioning them." I took a sip of my coffee, processing her words. "It hurt because I believed you meant it," I finally said. I know she acknowledged meeting my eyes directly. After you left, I fell apart. But it forced me to really look at myself and the person I'd become. I started therapy, moved out of my parents' sphere of influence, started standing up to my mother. She told me how she'd gotten a job at a different school in a lower-income neighborhood where she felt her work had more impact. How she'd distanced herself from the country club set her mother had always pushed her to cultivate. How Amelia's divorce had been a wake-up call for the entire family. Dad's had some health issues that made him reevaluate his priorities, she explained. And Mom's struggling with the social fallout from Amelia's divorce. The perfect family image she worked so hard to maintain has cracked, and she's having trouble coping. Despite everything, I felt a twinge of sympathy for Victoria, whose entire value system had been upended. We all construct narratives about what makes a good life, and having those narratives collapse can be disorienting at any age. I'm not telling you this to ask for another chance. Sophia continued, her voice steadier now. Too much has happened, and from what I've heard, you've built a wonderful life for yourself. I'm truly happy for you, Hannah. You deserve it. Her sincerity surprised me. This was a different Sophia than the one I'd known, more self-aware, more authentic. The woman I might have fallen in love with if she'd been this version from the start. Thank you, I said, meaning it. That means a lot. We talked for nearly half an hour, catching each other up on the broad strokes of our lives since the breakup. She was seeing someone new, a music teacher from her school. I told her about my promotion and my published stories. The conversation was surprisingly easy, without the tension I would have expected. As I prepared to leave, needing to get back to work, she asked one final question. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me? I considered this carefully, wanting to be honest. I think I already have, I said finally. Not for your sake, but for mine. Carrying anger was exhausting. She smiled, a flash of the old Sophia I had once loved. I understand. I'm working on forgiving myself too. We said goodbye without promises to stay in touch or meet again. Some chapters close definitively, even when the ending is more peaceful than expected. Walking back to my office, I felt a profound sense of closure. The conversation had confirmed what I'd spent the past year learning, that my worth wasn't determined by someone else's assessment, that betrayal could lead to growth, and that sometimes the most painful endings create space for new beginnings. Over the following months, I continued building my life on my own terms. I started dating again, cautiously at first, then with more openness. I met Cameron at a tech industry fundraiser, a software engineer with kind eyes and a quick wit who valued my intelligence and ambition without condition. Our relationship developed slowly, built on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine admiration. My relationship with my own family deepened as well. I'd always been close to my parents, but the breakup had brought us even closer. They had supported me unconditionally through the darkest days, reminding me of what real love looked like. Now, our Sunday phone calls and monthly visits were highlights rather than obligations. Looking back on that terrible dinner a year and a half later, I realized it had been a gift in disguise. Without those 5 devastating words, "hell do for now," I might have continued compromising myself indefinitely, seeking approval from people whose values fundamentally differed from my own. I might never have discovered the strength and resilience I now knew I possessed. The truth is, we all settle in some way when we accept treatment that undermines our worth. When we contort ourselves to fit someone else's expectations. When we silence our own voice to echo another person's values. The greatest gift we can give ourselves is the courage to walk away from situations where we're merely tolerated rather than truly valued. So, if you're watching this and recognizing your own relationship in my story, know that the pain of leaving, however excruciating, is temporary. But the pain of compromising your worth can last a lifetime. You deserve someone who sees you as irreplaceable, not someone who sees you as for now. I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. Have you ever had to walk away from someone who didn't value you? How did you rebuild afterward? Please like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and share with anyone who might need to hear that they're worth more than settling for. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings.